Okay, parents, make sure and thank those teachers, okay? And all our youth workers that work with those young folks, man, it's super important. And sometimes when you're tired, mom and dads, get up and go to church anyway, because it's so important. And these teachers over the years have helped us raise our children, and it just makes all the difference. We can't get everything into their lives they need, and can't be there all the time, and you need people reinforcing what you're teaching about how to live and love God and others, and all that contributes. Our guys, they trusted me and Teresa about when you go to college, find yourself a new church. This becomes your home church. Someday this will be your parents' church because you'll have a home church. So you got to stay active and be involved and do a ministry, and they're continuing to do that where they're living now. And so it all starts here. All starts here. So thank you. Hey, I had an awful week. I don't know about y'all. My week is depicted that it ended with a root canal. Perfect ending to my week. Okay? Yeah, so like it just hurts right now even. So, but it doesn't mean it's a bad week. It was a challenge. And at one point during the challenge, I realized my temper was getting a little bit short. Not that a pastor, police officer could have difficulty with temper. It's getting real short. So I sent for some prayer with some of y'all, okay? And, man, I could just tell. Made all the difference. Again, just because it's a challenging week and a sorry week, it doesn't mean it's a bad week. I was able to serve the families, the victims. I even had, and because this is public knowledge, a 3-year-old who drowned. Hey, watch those little guys around water, guys. They are so fast. Oh, my goodness. And so difficult, but I had the privilege of serving where I needed to serve and where I could. That's what it's about. We get confused sometimes. We have challenges in life. There's general challenges that we all face, and there's specific challenges, specific things that God has put in your path, God's will, your life, where you're headed, what's going on that's more unique to you. We all have those things. Some really sorry theology has been going around since theology got started, the understanding of God, okay? That just because grace is free, life should be free. Hey, God's forgiveness in Christ is freely offered to be accepted, okay? And come into that relationship with God and be forgiven, made new. That's free. Christ paid for it. Living, on the other hand, has to be earned. Growth, you earn. God's always offering his power and his love and his encouragement, but you still got to get up every day and do what you got to do and take care of things. And you're going to have challenges that are so difficult that only through God's power do you go through it and let him lift you up. But it's still work. There's still those challenges. In this sense that just because you have God, you just have this easy cruising life and millions of dollars is just nonsense. Absolute nonsense. So as we go through the challenges in life, and they can be, you got to work to get an education, to do your job, to have family. Family's about working to get to know each other more and more. And again, in our relationship, I don't marry a static person that she's not the person she was anymore. Well, duh, of course she's not the person she was anymore, and neither am I. Hopefully along the road we've grown and changed, and marriage is about two people changing together, both aimed at God individually and together, and enjoying that adventure of seeing who we become and become together. Friendships are not easy. You got to work on them. You got to grow and reach out and give and take and forgive. And we get it all so confused so often. We think this is too hard, therefore I'm not in God's will, or something's unfair. It's nonsense. Now, in regard to God's will, just remember, most of the time, knowing God's will and doing God's will is not really that complicated. Be faithful to what you have to do today. You're in the middle of whatever you need to accomplish today, take care of today, whether it's family, it's school, your studies. Do them. Do them well. Do them to the best of your abilities. Why should God show you tomorrow so you're finished with today? He'll pick his own timing when you need to know. Be faithful to God's will that you know. Sometimes we spend so much time thinking about what will God have for me tomorrow and on down the trail and where am I headed. that we back off on the ministry, the blessings, the sharing that we need to do today. This week, during my week, I noticed that it's a privilege that I had a lot of time to listen to some people that needed to share, and they just needed someone to listen. I had someone tell me, said, "You're so great at listening." I know, my wife. I had someone tell me I was so great at listening. I mean, that person really doesn't know me that well, but I got lucky, okay? But you know what? I did listen, okay? And actually, one of y'all put it this way a long time ago, but you said, "Hey, when I'm talking to somebody and the phone rings, I'm talking to somebody. Why would I answer it?" And so when someone comes up to your cube or something, they just want to dump or share or whatever, listen. Listen. It's important to work together and be one of those people in their lives. And so lots of things come along in life. Don't miss what God has for you today. And remember, God's will always be consistent with God's character. So as you wonder if this God's will or is this God's will, if it's not consistent with godly wisdom you see in the scripture, then that's easy to say no to that one. Okay? So that's usually a pretty easy way to knock out some of the things you're wondering. So do what God has for you today. Keep growing there. Face the challenges with God's strength and wisdom. And then God will show you those specific things as you go along. Well, today, there's a real famous narrative in the scripture. And it's a spy story. Okay, so I'll just show it to you. There's so much going on. I quit trying to make some kind of list of points. There's lots of points. There's a spy story, and you should say, "Oh, the spy story, Numbers 13 and 14. Just like if I said 10 Commandments, you'd say Exodus 20. There's a few of those you ought to know, okay? Creation, that's an easy one, come on. Genesis 1, 2, 3, okay? Well, Numbers 13 and 14 are one of those, at least to me. It's one of those great stories. There's so much going on in there, and it's a spy story. So where are we in the narrative of God's people, the Hebrew people in your Old Testament, okay? So here's a simple way to look at it. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, okay? Usually people give up reading the Bible somewhere, either Leviticus or Deuteronomy, because you got all the list of stuff, okay? Don't do that. Genesis, it's the word beginning, and that's how it starts, beginnings. Beginnings of creation, and then the beginnings of God calling a people. He calls Abram, renames him Abraham, and he starts a people. The people go along, they grow, there comes a famine, they wind up in Egypt. There's a lot more going on, but so now they're in Egypt. They continue to grow and be blessed. They're a challenge to the Egyptian people, so the Egyptians enslaved them. So now they're slaves in Egypt. And while slaves in Egypt, they're making bricks, they're making it more and more difficult because they just want them to just kind of die without having to slaughter them, okay? So they're trying to make a living, trying to feed their families, not really make a living, just survive. So God rescues them out with an exodus, and that's how we get the name of that book, okay? So Genesis, Exodus, and he brings them out with the plagues and the miracles. He even splits the sea. They go across, and now they've been heading towards their promised land that God has said, I'll give to you. So they're going along, and you have Leviticus. So what's that all about? Well, that's how to live, how to worship, how to treat each other. God is introducing them to who he is and what he's about and how to live a life as his people. So that's been going on, and now we get to Numbers. They're coming up to the promised land, and if you're a general and you're going to be taking on an enemy, you're going to be going to a land, what's one of the things you want to know about your own troops? How many are there? Kind of like numbers. We're going to do a count. How many have we got? Now, when they go into the promised land, we kind of think, countries. Like we had our trip to Ireland, and Ireland's like 2 counties. It's like Denton, Tarrant County. It's a whole country. Are you kidding me? 2 counties is a whole country? It's amazing. Well, you think about Israel. Whoa, Israel's only about the size of New Jersey anyway. Like, it would fit in Lake Michigan. I was just helping you all out. Make sure and share that with your husband, okay? So, it's not that big. And the part they initially take is even smaller. But the thing is, they don't have any drones, no GPS, no satellite photos and maps, no maps. The only thing they know about this promised land is, this guy over there heard a story about it once. Maybe this guy did some trade with some that went through the area. Somebody might have been there at some point, maybe way back. It had to be previous generations and their families, or they heard about it, or someone's joined in with the group that they've been traveling towards it. And so they're coming up on this land. And so they count the people, they see who they are, and who are they? They're basically traveling slaves who have some sheep and some goats and trying to do a little agriculture as they go so they can feed themselves while they head towards this promised land. They're Bedouins living in tents. Even their worship, their church is a traveling tabernacle. It's a tent. So now they get to their promised land, and they're going to send some guys in to spy. And that's what's going on here. So take a look in Numbers 13. The Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore in the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. And so they go to each tribe and they choose out some young leaders in the tribes. All right. And as we go through the list, I'm just going to point out a couple. Go in verse 6. The tribe of Judah, we have Caleb. Okay. Caleb, interesting, is that he's not a Hebrew person. He's been brought into the Hebrew family. Okay. He's a Kenizzite. All right, so he's actually someone who has joined into the Hebrew people. Go on down the list. You got other ones, Hosea, and that's another one. You see that in verse 8. And as you read through the whole list, you go, wait a minute, I've heard this story. There's Joshua and Caleb. They're the two heroes. Well, Hosea, which means salvation itself, is renamed by Moses to Joshua. That means the Lord saves. Okay, so at some point he gets a renaming there. And there's a note down in verse 16. Because if you're thinking, well, where'd he? Well, God leads Moses here to give us a little narrator's note, okay? These are the names of the men Moses sent to explore the land. Moses gave Hosea, I'm just having one of those days, son of Nun, the name Joshua. So then Moses sent them to explore the Canaan. He said, go up through the Negev and into the hill country. See what the land is like. What do they look for? Whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How's the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land. It is the season for the first ripe grapes. So you can see they don't have a lot of intel. They know where they're supposed to go for their land, and they've traveled through some difficult wilderness and desert to get there. But now they're in a pretty fertile area south of where Israel is, okay? So they're south, they're going to head north into it, they're going to go around on the western side, and they're going to check all this out for them and do kind of a loop. And they're going to do that in 40 days. They're going to check it out. So there they are. They need some intel. They're going to find out what's going on, and they do go on in. So, and they need to answer these questions. Now, quick question. Ancient Near East. How do you win a land? If you want to go in and take a land, what do you got to do? Basically, you need to take the cities. Because farmers have been farmers, agricultural, sheep herders. You know, the poor people have been the poor people have been the poor people. They're out there on the land, tilling the soil, raising goats, raising sheep, and there are leaders. Leaders come, leaders go. Sometimes they take more of our stuff, sometimes they take less of our stuff. But what do? We just try to feed our family, have some kids, raise those kids, they'll have families, and we just keep going and going and going. So you don't go conquer the farms. You conquer the leadership. And where are they? In the cities. So that's what you got to do. You got to take the cities. How do they fight in the ancient Near East? What, they dial up some drones? Hop in some tanks? No. It was all hand to hand. It's ancient Near East. And who's this fighting force for the Hebrew people? What have they just been trained as for a long time? Bricklayers. Slaves. Trying to survive and just make it. So what are they going to have for weapons? Not much. Actually, one of the best weapons of the day would just be a long, pointy stick. If you could find some metal to put on the end, you can sharpen up some, even better. Swords, hard to come by. Clubs, rocks, all that stuff. They're going to fight with these kind of fighting instruments. It's messy, it's bloody. Even if you win, lots die and get injured. It's a difficult, difficult task. So as they're looking at, and guys, sometimes we think it was magic, the Hebrew people. They went in, they only killed the enemy, and none of them died. No. God gives us challenges. And you got to work on some of these challenges, okay? The Hebrew people, to take their land, to do what God said, I'll give you, are going to have to fight for it. And when you have battle, you have casualties. So it's bittersweet, folks. And God's leading you there. And just because it's a challenge and you die working for it doesn't mean you're a failure. Okay? Because sacrifice is part of God's will in challenge. It's just part of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Because some things are worth the sacrifice. God said, I'm giving it to you. You're going to go in. And honestly, they're a little confused about this point too. That they're going to have to fight. So they're looking at it. So they go out. They explore the land. I'm in verse 21. From the desert of Zin as far as Rehob and towards Lebo Hamath. And they come up to the Negev. They come to Hebron. Hebron's a big, tough, difficult to conquer town. They go on through. They go on down in 23. They cut off a branch of a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them. I told our life group, I said, I'm not a wine guy. I'm not a grape guy. To me, a cluster of grapes is, what you get from Walmart. So I guess they come in bigger packs, huh? Anyway, so they got a big, whatever it is. It took 2 of them to carry it. So they bring it all back, and it took 40 days. So 26, they come back to Moses, and they report to the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went to the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's its fruit. Milk and honey is not a term we would use much today unless, church people taught their kids kind of a thing. It means it's really good. You can raise, I guess, goats were their primary milk source. So, you can raise goats and honeybees, and that's a good term. Fertile, nice land. We also get the idea that because the Israel area and that part is pretty desert right now, pretty barren. Well, they used to have a bunch of trees in a lot of different places, but they used them up, didn't replace them and take care of the land. So if you're a spy, there were forests you could hide in and stuff. You could loop around over there. It looked different than it does today. So it's a beautiful, fertile area. It's looking good, and they bring back fruit from there, and it's an exciting time. Now, how did they tell the people? They get the loudspeaker set up, get everybody in there in chairs, they'll be nice and comfy, and then they did a big announcement with, flat screens like Jerry's World going everywhere. No. Like some guy would stand here without his mic, okay? Hey, Mike, what they found was they found some fruit, and they found this, and it's really nice. It's like milk and honey. Oh, wow. And then, 2 groups behind Mike, they go, what? And he would tell them, it's going to take a little time. So they tell the word, and they're spreading it out there, and everybody's kind of spread out in their tribes and their groups and their families, and they're hearing this news, and they said, do you see the fruit? No, go up there and look. And so they run up, and they go, oh, wow, it's like, man, look at 2 guys are carrying it. It's super exciting, okay? So they're telling the word, and it's going out, and they're telling everybody. We continue here. Where's the but? 28. This is bad. But the people who live there are powerful. Their cities are fortified and large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. They're big bruisers, okay? So wherever are big bruisers in your mind, they got a bunch of them in there, okay? They're going to be tough. The Amalekites live there in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites, never did deal with them well, live near the sea and along the Jordan. You can kind of tell because Caleb silences the people before Moses says, hey, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. What's going on is the 10 other spies are throwing out the negative stuff in a negative way, and they're turning people away from the challenge. Yeah. Hey, these people are tough. They're big. They're big, old, strong cities we're going to have to take. And how do you get in the city with who we are and what we got? Okay? So they're really spreading negative news among people. Hey, how many of y'all would have thought that 3,000 years ago plus people were so easily swayed? Huh? That somebody's grumbling for the plan. Well, I don't like that plan. That plan is just not what I wanted. I wanted an easy plan. Or how soon we forget what God has done in our lives. God just got them out of slavery with miracles. He split a sea. He's been guiding them, and here they are at the land he promised. You think God could handle it? Yeah, Moses, Aaron, Caleb, Joshua, a few others thought so. I can prove that in a minute. They thought, yeah, we can do this. We can go there. Are we going to die? Maybe. Are we going to hurt and lose some family members and friends? Absolutely, probably. I don't know how God's going to do it, but let's go find out. But the negativity gets going, folks. It gets negative. But the men who'd gone up, verse 31, said, we can attack these people. They're stronger than we are. And they spread the Israelites a bad report. Now it's going grumbling. Now it's going south. It's pushing out there. The rumors going crazy about the land. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. It will eat us. The people there are not just like big, strong people. We're in Ireland. Like I said, it was like a country of me, but they were smaller. Okay? Like a bunch of people kind of like my family, just smaller. So if they looked at me and they think, man, they grow Irishmen pretty big in Texas, okay? Well, they changed it to, they were like the Nephilim, okay? They were like the ancient demigod giants. So now they're just lying in the rumors, okay? We look like grasshoppers in our own eyes. We look the same to them. And all night, all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud, and they're grumbling. And now they're saying, oh, if only we had died in Egypt or in this wilderness, which is hilarious to me. If only we had died. Okay, fine. If they're that big and bad, go die trying to take the promised land. Death is an option. I don't see why they want to go back to do it, but you know how people get, right? To me, it's like, man, you can die tomorrow when we go take this land. I mean, what are you talking about? But logic is not what happens when you get a panic going. At the end, in 14:4, we should just choose a new leader and go back to Egypt. Wow. Let's go back to slavery where they're going to slaughter us. How short our memories are. And we're the same today. We can't just laugh at them and say we're not like that. We forget what God has done in our lives. We face a new challenge, a bigger challenge, a different challenge, or just tired. And we look at that challenge and we forget what God has already done in our lives, done in the lives around us, okay? And we forget to depend on God as we head forward. He's got this. But our memories are so shallow. And we get down and we start grumbling and get negative. And then we want to go back to slavery? Are you kidding me? Here's a simple Brad saying. If you can't go back, remember, it's me. It's simple. Thank you. Go forward. Okay, I know I live on these kind of sayings. All right, I've made them up just for me. If you can't go back, go forward. And since we're on that, that includes girlfriends or boyfriends or where you've been or if you failed out of something. Okay, it's not an option. Sometimes you fail out just because you're incapable. Sometimes you just didn't study enough. Sometimes it's not your thing. Learn. Go on. Things happen. Options closed. Doors closed. If it's closed, it's closed. Go forward. Learn something. Going back to slavery is just a dumb choice, but there they are. So 5, Moses and Aaron fall face down in front of the whole group. Joshua, son of Nun, Caleb, they both rip their clothes, and basically they stand up by falling down. They're standing up to the people saying, no, don't do this. Caleb's saying, we should go. We can do it. Folks, I truly believe they would have won if they would have followed God there. God put them there. God had them ready. They revolted and rejected, okay? They would have won. It had even been a bigger miracle. Do you hear what God did? Man, he took a bunch of slaves, and they took the land. It's unbelievable. Instead, they're going to get some time to think about it and train and get ready in a different way, okay? So there they are, and so they fall down, they rip their clothes, and they said, the land we went through is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, there you go, verse 8, highlight it in your life, okay? If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord. Who you're rebelling against is God. Now, the fear is driving you because your focus isn't on God like it should be, okay? Do not be afraid of the people of the land because we will devour them. Their protection is gone. But the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them. But instead, they're rebelling. And then it happened, folks. Verse 10. What's that say in Numbers 14 and 10? The whole assembly are talking about, now they want to stone their leadership. Anybody ever been there? Really? Yeah. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting of all the Israelites. Dad went to the back of the car. Dad said, okay, you made me come over there. And the glory, we tend to think of, the glory of God as, oh, no, it's like scary, awesome, beyond anything you can imagine, looking to the center of the sun, overpowering. God showed up. And God is not happy. For time's sake, I'm going to kind of jump forward here. God says, you know what? Real tired of these folks. So what I'm thinking is, I'm just going to wipe them all out. Moses, we'll start again with you. Great, take a few more centuries, I'll be better prepared. I'm tired of these guys. Like it matters to God on time? To us, it sounds like a long time. To him, it's like, start over. Moses begs for him to forgive and throws up some arguments. Like, hey, yeah, but then everybody will know that you brought them out and then they didn't make it. Come on, God, it makes you look bad. I don't know who he's arguing with at this point. I just love the fact that he's standing up. In 17, let's see, I love it when we quote God to God. Moses does that. Now may the Lord's strength be displayed just as you declared. The Lord is slow to anger, abounding in love, forgiving sin and rebellion, okay? Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. And I've wondered for years, why do people quote God to God during their prayer time and stuff? That's totally aside. Why are we quoting God to God? Like he doesn't know his own writing? Then it dawned on me, no, we're quoting God to God for ourselves. We're reminding us of what God's already told us, and I think he's cool with that. Okay? As we encourage ourselves with his own words is what we're doing, to trust him. So Moses stands up for his people, and then look at 20. It's such a beautiful statement here. The Lord replied, I have forgiven them, as you ask. You notice it says it's like done, Aubrey's term. I have forgiven, like I'm going to forgive, or I now forgive. It's like when God forgives, it's done and gone. It's done. Not I'm forgiving, I forgave. I've done it. It's in the moment God forgives, it's so far past. It doesn't exist anymore. Isn't that amazing insight right here, back in Numbers? When you ask God to forgive you, and God, with the gift of Christ on the cross to forgive my sins, will you forgive me? You're not only forgiven and filled with God's presence, but it's like gone. Your sins are just gone. They're not there anymore. That's the kind of forgiveness we get. And God does forgive, and yet there are still consequences, okay? We're done with the sin, but we've got consequences. He says, 22, not one of those who saw my glory, the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, who disobeyed me and tested me 10 times, means a whole lot, okay? Not one of them will ever see the land. 24, but because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land along with his descendants. If you jump on down, you'll find Joshua is the same way. These guys were faithful to me. Look in, 29. In this wilderness, your bodies will fall. Every one of you, 20 years or more, who was counted in the census. So if you're 20 or more, you're going to die before we go into the promised land. And you grumbled against me. So Moses, Aaron, Joshua, Caleb, and their families are going to make it. Though Moses and Aaron. Moses isn't going to make it. Aaron's not going to make it. Joshua and Caleb and their families. And then if you were 20 or older and you were standing up for God during this whole mess, you get to make it. So there's like a group judgment and there's individual going on in there. I'd actually missed that detail for a whole bunch of years. So now we don't know the exact count later, but that's what's going to happen. Your bodies are going to fall in the wilderness. You're going to be shepherds for 40 years. For 40 years, 1 year for each of the 40 days you explored the land. Now I'm going to summarize the rest of the story. God has just given his judgment. He has forgiven. There are consequences, and there's another lesson in life. God will forgive you. You can be forgiven. But some of the things we choose to do and get ourselves into, or just happen, the consequences continue, and you got to work through those. Okay? Sometimes you do something and you're going to have consequences. Got to forgive. You can learn, but it doesn't mean you're not going to walk through some of the consequences. So they are going to go through those. Now, a bunch of their, and the 10, the fraidy cat 10, the scaredy cat 10, the fearful 10. I'm working for a title for those guys. I hadn't really found my favorite yet. The 10 who turned away and led the people away, they all got smoked right there. They died of a plague. Boom. Okay? So everybody knows this is a real deal. Well, you'd think they would. A bunch of their leaders got together and said, okay, God, we're sorry, we repent. Let's go. Come on, everybody, let's go attack. Ah! And Moses going, no, don't do this. No, God's not with you. No. And they go, ah! And it says in 44, they went. In 45, the Amalekites and the Canaanites who lived in the hill country came down, attacked them, beat them down, all the way to Hormah. Okay, they went and attacked anyway without God's help. And again, I look at my life sometimes and I go, why sometimes do I do multiple levels of stupid? It's my heritage. It's the heritage of all humanity, folks. So why don't I try to learn a little more from my past for today? Folks, there's so much in this passage. And I'll just kind of summarize it this way. Hey, will you and I trust God? Will you? Will me? Will we work at our goals and tasks God puts in front of us? Will we accept God's corrections when they come and learn? Will we grow? My conclusion is just a simple statement. We're all on a journey, okay? A journey every day. Where are you headed today? Are you headed in the direction God's pointing you? Will you embrace and accept the challenges? And with his strength and wisdom, you're gonna win. Now, you might not survive. But where does that put me if I ultimately don't survive? You've heard it from me before. With Jesus in heaven. And I don't have to worry about this root canal, okay? No more. I get life scary, folks. But sometimes you got something in front of you you just need to deal with, and you're the one. It's your number. You're up. People are dependent on you. God says you got to go there. Okay, you're afraid. Yeah, you might get hurt. That's just the way it goes. It's kind of nice if you got somebody to go with you. Well, how about being a part of a church and a family and a small group so you got that? Then push the door and go. Go, whatever it is. Facing it in your family, in your friendships, in your work, in your own attitude or growth or fears. Go. As God directs us, he'll take care of business as you're going along. But you got to earn it. Grace is free. Growing and going through the daily challenges, that takes dedication and work. Check the scriptures, see if I'm right about that, okay? And with God, you got this. And with each other, as I discovered again this week, with the encouragement and prayer of others on your difficult days, you just feel like you're lifted up. It didn't make the day easier, honestly, but it made my attitude and dedication so much stronger. Went right through the day, okay? Made it through on top. That's what it's about. God, help us to be strong and courageous, to follow your will wherever you guide us. In Christ's name, amen.